Today we're going to be doing a menstrual practice. Today's class is a little bit shorter, and you might find that you can follow along as I practice, and as you redo the video, you may just be able to make notes and not even have to follow the video. So it's called a yoga practice. So you might, like I said, need to watch this a few times, follow along with it until you're able to practice on your own. So the first pose we're going to take is Supta Baddha Konasana. It's a restorative posture, and I'm going to use some blankets. Now, these are single bed size, and I folded them up in such a way that they are about the same size as a yoga bolster. If you have a bolster, you're welcome to use that as well, or in place of, I should say. But since most people at home don't have a bolster, I'm just going to use the blankets. If you don't have enough blankets, I've got 4 here, so I'm going to use 2 blankets and a third. I'm going to take a third blanket, and you can always adjust depending on your comfort level. But 3 blankets for my height is probably a good place to start. And I'm going to use a short, small folded blanket for a pillow. So that's going to be right on the end of my so-called bolster. So I'm going to bring this right up in front of the wall. I've got a wall space here, and right in the center of my mat. I've also got 2 blocks. Now this could be 2 couch cushions. This could be 2 towels that are like 2 big towels that are folded up evenly, just for the leg support on either side. So I'm going to keep them near the wall so that they're ready when I come into the posture. Now, this sort of a practice is really great during menstruation, particularly if you may be having menstrual cramps, if you're feeling like you just don't have a lot of energy to do much, but you're feeling achy in the back, heavy in the abdomen, possibly just a little bit low mood. So this is a perfect way to remedy that. Got my chair handy for later. It's a little bit noisy. So if you can see here, I've taken my feet together except the toes are spreading apart. So it's like the feet are in prayer position. The balls of my feet are touching, if you can see that, and the toes are spreading apart. So I'm going to push this bolster, this stack back just a little bit so I'm not right up against it. I don't want it to be right up against my buttocks. And I'm even going to come a little further forward. Oh, that chair is just coming out of the way now. So you can even see here that the bolster is just coming to the top of the waist. It's not under the buttocks at all. The buttocks are down on the floor. I'm going to bring this blanket right up to the base of the shoulders. So I have some head support here. Before I get super settled, I want to make sure these buttocks are scooping away from the waist, so there's a lengthening in the low back. And when I'm menstruating, I want to support the legs so they're not hanging in the air. So I take my block or your rolled blankets or towels and bring them to the root of your thigh. If you're very flexible, you may have a little thinner roll. For me, this is just the right height. And let's come back up to the shoulders. The shoulder blades, like I'm doing the back stroke, I want to really tuck my shoulder blades down so they're going down towards the waist, which gives a nice lift to this armpit area of my chest. So that's coming up. I tilt my head so the chin is towards the chest, and then gently lay my head back evenly. Make sure again this blanket is under the head and the neck. And you can see the support of the head goes right to the top of the head. So I don't have my head hanging back at all. So just touching the shoulders, but not under the shoulders. So here is Supta Baddha Konasana. So there should be enough support under the legs that you feel a quietness in the abdomen. If you feel any gripping in the abdomen, then give yourself a little more support under the thighs. If you're not sure, then just try a little bit more support and see how that feels. You might say, oh, that feels better. So in which case, use as much support as you need. The other thing to note, if you've done this posture before, reclining cobbler's pose is the translation, you might find when you're not menstruating, you might not need the leg support. Your legs might go down further to the floor. But during menstruation, the body changes, things feel different. So just really acknowledge what you need today, and not based on what you needed last week. Okay? Arm positions can be very basic neutral position like Shavasana with the palms facing up, making sure the forearms are touching evenly. The other position, a little bit more intense for the shoulders, is to hold the elbows and stretch the arms up. So here, get my bun out of the way so my forearms can come up and they are supported on that pillow that was sticking out a little bit at the top of my head. When we have the arms overhead, you might feel a little more opening in the sides of the chest, the armpit area of the chest. Maybe you're able to take a little more fuller breath. And at some point, I'm going to bring my arms down because my shoulder doesn't like this right now. But at some point, you might hold that pose for quite a while, that arm position, until something in your mind says it's time to change. And then maintaining that nice openness that we experienced with the arms over the head, bringing the arms back down to rest evenly. So if we've set up properly, if we've got enough support under the thighs, we might easily hold this pose for 5 to 10 minutes. So swallowing in the throat, just release the tongue in the back of the throat. And let the tip of the tongue rest behind the lower teeth. On each exhalation, seeing where in the body you can let go a little bit more. As your body is settling, your breath is settling, just start to observe your exhalation and a moment or two of pause at the end of each exhale. Before the inhale comes in, there's a short pause where you've finished exhaling and you've not quite begun the inhale yet. So just normal exhale and a pause for a moment or two, maybe 3. And as soon as that inhale wants to come in, allow that inhale. At the end of each exhale, as you pause, deeply in the present moment, just notice if there's anywhere you could let go a little bit more. Maybe it's in the abdomen. Maybe it's in the shoulders. Maybe it's in the neck. So as you pause after each exhale, just let yourself become a little heavier and completely accepting the support of the props, of earth, letting go of all your commitments, any roles you play. And just be quiet for a few more moments here. And now take a slightly deeper inhalation, one at a time, bringing your hands to each thigh and helping each thigh to come into an upright position with the feet flat on the floor. Taking a few breaths here. Slowly exhale, pause. Normal breath in, normal breath out. Pause. And then if you have a prop beside your right leg, just move it over away so you can carefully roll to your right side. Come into fetal position right off of your supports. Bring your right arm under your head as a pillow. And just be in a few breath cycles here. Normal inhale, normal exhale, pause. And using that top arm in front of you to start the sitting up process, push it down into the floor and come back up to sitting. So we're going to use the same support that we have here. We won't need the blocks or the extra blankets. Coming into pose of the child, so downward facing hero's pose, Adho Mukha Virasana. If your heels easily touch the buttocks, fabulous. If they don't, then take a blanket, a thin or thick blanket. I'm going to make mine a little thicker by three-folding it to have good support. So when I come forward to rest on the support, my buttocks won't float up, or at least they won't float up as much. So nice and wide with the knees here, out to mat edge, and the support coming about the middle of the thigh, not too close in to press the lower abdomen, especially with menstrual cramps. Aiming for about the navel area to support the pose. So as I come down, I place my hands to really support, and I lengthen my front. So notice my back. I'm not rounding the back to come down. If you find you need to round the back to come down, you may need to build up. I happen to have another bolster here, or another easy way if you don't have the bolster but you have the blocks, you could easily place a couple of blocks underneath one of the blankets or all of the blankets, so when you come down you have a bit of extra support. And you can see my back is flat here. My palms are facing down, the elbows are just easily bent. Another option for the arms, though you'll want to have a little support under the forehead for this one. So I take a little tip of my blanket so I can have my forehead straight down, and that way I can reach the arms straight out. It really helps to open up the lower back muscles, relieve any heaviness that might be in the low back. And similar to the other pose, you might find after a while of being here, a little more active, you could hang on to the edges of your mat and push back the buttocks. So the buttocks are pressing back onto the heels because we're pushing with the arms to activate the pelvis going back. At some point, I'm going to also take out these extra blocks, so you can build up as you need. Even if you're the kind of person who could lay your trunk right on the flat floor, during menstruation, take at least a blanket, just a little bit of height. So coming down, and you can continue to have the forehead straight down. It's quite comfortable. Have a little support under the forehead. You could even use just a rolled hand towel, but you still want to keep the length of the back neck. So we don't want to have the head lifted so high that the chin's poking forward. The other option, which is also a nice little turn of the neck for twisting, is to be over on one cheek towards the ear, and any position with the arms that is comfortable. Arms a little bit higher or a little bit lower. So if we're using the side of the face to rest, so we're getting a little bit of a neck turning here, we will want to change the position of the head, and we want to keep the back of the neck long. So I keep the chin towards my chest, so I push with my arms a little, keep the chin towards my chest as I turn my head to the other side, and then coming down towards the cheek, maybe towards the ear. See what your flexibility is like on this side. If it's too much, just push a little with the arms, and you might need to be a little closer to the nose than to the ear, especially as you exhale and pause to see if you can really let go of the neck here. You'll be able to quickly tell whether you've gone too far. Just a few more moments here in Adho Mukha Virasana. And your next inhalation, walk your hands down towards your knees, hands on the floor, and really use your hands to sit yourself up. So you're pushing down into the hands, bringing your hands up onto the thighs until you can sit up nice and tall. And then let's bring the knees together. So I'm just going to move the blankets, Bring the knees back together. Now, if anybody here is feeling that the feet are really challenged, or the knees are really challenged, we do have a chair handy, and we're going to use the chair for the next posture, but we can just relieve the knees and the feet by kneeling in front of the chair, holding the sides of the chair, and just coming into a supported downward dog pose. So we're not going completely upside down here, but we're getting to open the knees after that bent knee pose, open the ankles, or sort of bend the ankles after the ankles were so open at the front. And to intensify the resetting of those feet and knees, we can lift the toes up to really charge the kneecaps a little bit more. Lift up the kneecaps. And then with the hands, I'm going to pretend I'm in a handstand, and I'm going to push my hands into the chair so strongly my whole torso starts to stretch back even more. So the kneecaps are tight. The knees, if I look at my knees, I should see the fabric in my tights or the skin around my knees squeezing in towards the bone. So we're squeezing the muscles in towards the bone to reset those knee joints after deeply bending in the last position. So this is downward dog with the support of the hands on the chair, which is also good for people who have sore shoulders and don't want to fully weight bear on the hands on the floor. To come out, we simply bend the knees and step forward. And you can even just bend the knees to stand up. So we're going to use this chair. It should be a chair that you can put your feet under. And here, because I have a metal chair, I'm going to want a little more softness and warmth. So I'll just add a blanket to the top of my chair. I'm going to take one of my blankets and make a place to sit on. So, and this could be higher or lower depending on how your back feels when you sit down, or your hamstrings. So as I sit on my blanket, I want to be able to sit up with the buttocks lifting up. If there's a sense that the opposite is happening, like the abdomen is sinking in and I'm dropping down into the buttocks, then I need to sit up on a little bit more height here. So for this pose, we're going to come into one bent leg, Janu Shirsasana. And I will take one more blanket. So this could be easily a couch cushion for this next, or a rolled up towel. So the right leg comes into a bent position, and notice how I pulled my leg. You can take both fingers behind each side of the knee to pull up the knee into a bent position, and then take the knee out to the side. It's a little bit of knee safety. The foot comes into the opposite thigh, and so this knee, you can see it's bouncing, it's sort of floating on the floor. So this is where I want to be able to press this knee. The head of this knee stretches out and down. And if I can't press into the floor, that's where a blanket comes in handy. So I might just place the blanket here at the end of the knee. If my leg is up a little higher, then I would bring the blanket, the thicker folded area, a little closer to my upper thigh. So I feel like I can really stretch this knee out. So just noticing, and you might be different from side to side. And as I said before, you might find that however you did this pose last week might not be the same when you're menstruating. So you might just need a little bit more support. So not only is the knee going to the side here, but the torso tends to follow it. So we want to correct that. So we want to bring the torso so it's facing the chair. The straight leg is straight, the toes and the knee facing up, and some activity in the leg, just like we did in the downward dog. And I can even press into this knee, into this shin, and turn. So I'm bringing this back waist. The back waist is the bent leg waist. This back waist coming forward. And I'm going to bring this chair a little bit closer. I'm just going to hold onto the chair under the blanket for a moment and lift up the chest. So you can see my back is flat. I'm turning towards the chair and pressing down this knee. If I don't feel that the knee's pressing down, I bring the blanket in a little bit closer, and then I feel, oh yes, now I can really feel the activation of this knee pressing out and down. At the same time, from that action of pressing down, I'm also turning this back waist forward, lifting the chest. Notice the foot under the chair, it's very active. The knees and the toes facing up on that straight leg. I might even, if I have the flexibility, I feel like my back might be rounding a bit here, but for those of you who can keep the back straight and still go forward, find your place. So I might bring my chair a little bit closer. If you have that flexibility, you might take the chair further away and still be able to, as if you're zipping up a jacket, you want to really open the chest as you come forward. So finding your place. I happen to have a bar at the end of my chair, so that actually gives me a really beautiful way to just engage my straight leg a little bit more. So I'm still pressing the bent knee, bringing the back waist around, lots of activity going on here, lots of action happening in this inaction. So this pose looks fairly inactive, maybe to the untrained eye, but there's a lot of action happening here right now. And then we're going to come into more of a repose. So here, if the chair is too low, then you put a pillow, a bolster, a couple more blankets, fold the arms and catch just about the hairline, the eyebrow area, somewhere in that area. And I'm still pressing this knee. I'm still turning this back waist forward. But I'm resting the head. I'm resting the arms. The legs are still active. I find when I've had menstrual cramps, the more active I can make the legs in this pose, the more benefit it has to how I physically feel in my menstrual body. And this is the kind of pose, at some point you might decide, enough action, now I'm just going to relax. And as I do that, I'm even going to feel my back waist going back even more. So the difference is, I'm just going to do that as I press the knee, I bring the back waist forward. And as I relax a little bit, you see my back waist moves back a little bit more. So depending how we're feeling from moment to moment in our practice, from day to day, sometimes we do this pose when we're not menstruating, and it might be, you might not need the chair to be coming down. Some people might have their head on a block on the shin or chin on the shin. So just honoring your own body in this moment, not how your body was acting last week. Or even if you're in a class or your body's not doing the same thing as mine, not looking at my body and saying, oh, I have to go down that far in that same way. Just really honoring your body and using the breath, that exhalation, and just observing the pause at the end of the exhale might give you a little insight as to how your body is feeling, any messages that you might be getting as you exhale and pause. This might be a little bit easier to hear those messages. So Janu Shirsasana, about a couple of minutes on each side. We're going to change now, and the first thing I do is I bring my hands to the floor. I do not want to do a sit-up. I'm going to use my hands and push myself up. So I try to keep the abdomen quiet and fluid. Same thing with the knee. I don't want to just lift the knee and engage all the muscles intensely. I'm going to lift my knee up and stretch it back out. And just for a moment, just like we did in the first side, you can just sit for a moment in Dandasana. Both legs are straight, holding the chair. You can push down into the chair if that feels more comfortable. Just watch the shoulders are moving back and down, and the sides of this armpit chest are moving up towards the ceiling. And then we'll come into the second side. So the second side, again, take a hold of both sides of your knee, pull the shin up so you've got a nice tight bend in the knee. And as the knee is in that bent position, we take it out to the side. Bring the sole of the foot into the opposite thigh. And I've got a blanket on this side. This hip is different on me. I'm not going to necessarily use the same height as I did on the right side. So just notice if you're like me and you have a little difference from side to side. So we're placing a blanket, some support underneath the bent knee. And I happen to have that rung on the back of my chair, which I'm going to use. But if you don't have it, just imagine you've got something you're just pressing out with the foot. Not pointing the toes, but pressing a bit more towards the ball of the foot. As you press the left thigh down, turning the waist forward and lifting up, sitting up tall. So this is as if we're zipping up a jacket. We're opening the chest, nice flat back. If it's impossible to get that feeling of opening, then you need to sit up on another blanket. You'll find the higher you bring the hips, the less the hamstring is pulling, and you'll be able to have a little more freedom. You won't have such a challenge in the low back or the hamstring area. And again, if you have the flexibility, you might lean a little more forward or move your chair more forward. So again, lifting up. So the more you go forward, the more work we have to do to lift up the chest. It's the chest that's lifting, not so much the chin. Pressing down that bent leg thigh, bringing the back waist forwards. And then coming into more repose with the arms, with the forehead resting on the chair, somewhere between the eyebrows and the hairline. And if it feels like you're not resting, then you grab something else to put under your head and your arms. And if you're not sure if you're resting, try taking a little more support and see how it feels. If you say, oh, yes, that's much better, then you're probably right. So you might need just a little more support there. So the legs stay active, pressing down the left thigh, turning the left waist forward now. The left waist is the back waist. So bringing that back left waist more forward. So it is a little bit of a twisting pose. So as the untrained eye looks at this pose, it looks like it might be a very inactive pose. So see where the activity is in the legs. So my straight leg, the knee is facing up, the toes are facing up, and I have my thighs very tight here. I'm sucking the muscle into the bone, and the knee joint is firm. If I try to move my kneecap, it is solid. It's not moving at all. So really active to my inner eye, but to the outer eye, it looks like a very possibly inactive pose. Using the breath, using that exhale, pause, just to see that you are settling into the present moment. And if you experimented on the last side with letting go of some of the activity, you might let the muscles in the legs go. You might become less active inwardly as well. And just notice how that changes. You might reactivate again just to see what the difference is. You might decide, if you did this practice for 5 days during menstruation, you might find there's some days, from day 1 or day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5 of your cycle that you might really need to be less active. And some days where you might feel that you want to be more active. When I was having deep, deep menstrual cramps, the more active I could make these legs, the better I felt during my practice and after my practice. Janu Shirsasana. So about 2-3 minute holding on each side. We're coming towards the end of this side now. And getting ready, placing the hands flat on the ground. So we're really pushing down the hands to sit up tall so that we're not using the abdominal muscles. And then I take even just one hand on the bent knee and lift the knee up and stretch both legs out straight. So similarly to when we did pose of the child and reset the body in downward dog off the chair, we can also reset the hips and the knees and the joints by just sitting up tall in Dandasana for a moment. Lifting the low back, opening the chest, and we're going to come into our next posture. We will use the chair again, so if you have enough blankets, you can leave that blanket on your chair and just push it off to the side. We're going to come into a supported back bend relative. It's a cousin of a back bend, Setu Bandha. It's also a cousin of shoulder stand. Now, when we're menstruating, we avoid all inversions and all abdominal workings. We want the abdominal area to stay loose, and Ayurvedically, the nature of the abdomen is watery, so there should be an easy flow. So we're not doing anything that grips or makes the abdomen tight. Gita Iyengar once described the menstrual fluid like urine. Like, say you had to go pee, you wouldn't want to keep holding it in and holding it in and holding it in. You want to release it. And so similarly to that, we don't want to go upside down when we're supposed to be flowing out. We don't want to be gripping the abdomen when we should be releasing and letting go. So no inversions and no strong abdominal workings at all. So this is a cousin of shoulder stand, but it does not have the hips up higher than, does not have the hips up high. So it's actually highly recommended to do during the menstrual practice. So 3 blankets I'm going to take, or you could have a bolster. And let's see. Get my blankets here. And then I am going to use this one more blanket here. And if you have the blocks, I would add the blocks at the wall as well. These things are, let's see, long ways so that they'll be easy to reach with our feet, and this actually long ways as well. So I have a long blanket on top of my 2 blocks, and I've got my support about there. And what this looks like in terms of shoulder stand cousin, this is called Setu Bandha Sarvangasana on a soft support, is I'm going to bring the buttocks close to the end here, and I want to come just right off of this support. So you can see my shoulders are coming off, and I even want to come off all the way until my shoulders are extremely grounded on the floor. And then, oh, do you see how my foot's a little far away? I'd like to get my feet into the wall. So I'm just going to come off, roll to the side carefully, and I'm going to pull this support. I was a couple of inches away from the wall, so I'm going to pull that support in a couple of inches. That's about 5 centimeters for my metric fans. And so again here, coming off just enough, and you can see my shoulder blades are just the tips, the bottom tips of my shoulder blades are getting caught on the blanket. And oh, this feels better. Now you see that the knees are a little bit bent. That means in order for me to straighten the legs, I'm going to have to be strong in the legs. And that is a beautiful place to be for this pose, particularly during menstruation. It helps to relieve the low back. It helps to strengthening the legs helps to relax the abdomen. So as I press into my legs, you might even see where my thumbs are, this side of the armpit chest even moves more towards my chin, and my chin can move more towards the chest in Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. So I feel about 5, 6, 7 pounds of pressure, my feet pressing into the wall. And you'll notice my feet are wide. I didn't mention that, but the feet are almost at mat width, not quite, but close to mat width. They can be a little closer, like hip width, but just make sure you've got your blocks and your supports underneath properly there, so your feet aren't floating. So I come down with the arms. So again, with the arm positions, palms facing up, Shavasana arms. If you can keep the chest lifted, you might even bring the arms up into goal post, or an L shape for each arm. And the third position would be, again, holding onto the arms, holding onto the elbows, and stretching the arms overhead. Sometimes this might challenge the low back, so if that's the case, you might feel more comfortable leaving the hands down by the hips. Taking the arms over the head just helps to open up the top portion of the lungs, up near the collarbones, up under the armpit area. We might feel just a little more spaciousness in our breath. If at any time you have discomfort in the low back, you can try activating the legs more, like really firm the thigh muscles even more, like thighs of steel, and press the thighs down towards the supports. If that does not relieve your low back, then I recommend just coming into a bent knee position, and you can rest your knees onto each other with your feet wide apart, and that's another leg position if you're experiencing discomfort in the low back. If the low back is fine, then we'll keep the legs out a little bit longer, and the arms, your choice for positioning with the arms. hold this pose for 5 to 10 minutes. But for today's purpose, we're going to get ready to come out now, taking a deeper breath in, bringing the arms back to neutral, hands even on the torso, and bending the knees one at a time, bringing the feet flat to the floor. Let's everybody join the knees together and the feet wide apart. So the feet are out towards mat edge and your knees are leaning in on each other. Adjust your feet so that you feel both knees are evenly resting on the other knee. And then walk your feet towards each other. Bring your left foot over towards your right. Bring your left arm across your chest. So now I'm getting ready to roll into a fetal position. And I just use my arm and my leg to let me down gently. Use your arm as a pillow or a pillow as a pillow. And let your body acclimate back to neutral position, taking several cycles. Inhale, exhale, pause. Inhale, slowly exhale, pause. We want to practice not being in a rush, especially during our menstrual practice. On your next inhalation, bring your left palm on the floor firmly, starting to push up, push up. And I'm going to come into anybody that had any discomfort in their low back after the last pose, or for anyone that just wants a little more stretch on their low back, a little more quietness in the brain. We're going to take one last pose before relaxation. And I'm going to sit on a nice square blanket this time. In fact, because I'm menstruating, or so-called menstruating, I actually don't menstruate anymore, but because I'm doing a menstrual practice, I know that when I was menstruating, I would need more height. My body just was not happy to go as far as I would in other times. So I'm sitting up on the blanket, and I just want you to notice for a moment. Let's take a couple of blocks. I'm not sure what you're going to need for this pose, so let's get ready with the blanket on the chair for some softness and comfort, and a couple of blocks in case that might be where you need to go. And just a word about the support. This is a sitting pose, so the only thing that's really being supporting us is the seat for now. Once we come forward, we'll have some more support for the head. But here I'm sitting quite close to the edge, and this is what I want to avoid. I want to sit all the way back. Well, depending how big my blanket is, I want to sit back far enough so that you can see where this blanket comes. It's coming at least to the middle of my thigh. So the feet are on the floor. So my buttocks are a little bit higher than the feet. And that differentiation is going to allow me to come forward easier. And I bring my hands here to the hip crease because that's where I'm coming forward. So just like in the other postures, I first lift my chest and I keep this hip crease going back and deep as I start to come forward. So here, bring the hands, the head onto the chair. If it's very easy, you might go a little bit lower. Notice I've made a certain configuration with a low block and a high block. My elbows are on the floor. I might say, oh, that's maybe, I think one tall block is the next height. And notice the palms are facing up if you're coming this far onto the floor. Now, the thing to notice here, if I was looking at you, I would want to see that your neck is horizontal. As you can see, I could get my head down lower, but do you see how my neck is now going down like a waterfall? So this is not going to be as relaxing on my head or my brain as having the neck in a horizontal position. So depending how far you come into this deep forward bend, depending how far your torso comes down onto your legs, you may need to stay up on a little bit more height in order to keep this neck horizontal. So in essence, we have the full weight of the head is going down into the block, right around the hairline, a little more toward the eyebrows for this position, so that I really feel the weight of my head. If I have a lower block, I'm going to touch the block, but I do not feel the weight of my head. I just feel my head grazing the block. So just experiment. If you want something that's somewhere in between, it's usually a low block and a medium block. That is about an inch or so lower than one tall block. And the other option, of course, is to have the chair. You can push the chair further away. So just when you're pushing the chair further away, notice that the buttocks are still going down into the support. So this isn't the type of forward bend where you would lift up the buttocks. The buttocks stay well grounded, and the more grounded the buttocks can be, there's more softness in the abdomen. So here we are in Adho Mukha Sukhasana, or Yoga Mudra, this has been called, as a seal. Mudra means seal. So just sealing in the goodness of our practice so far. And now we're going to sit up, use the arms to sit yourself up, and notice which leg is in front. You're going to change the crossing of the legs. And this is a quite tight crossing of the legs, so my knees are not wider than my mat. I've got a nice tight crossing here. This will help to open up the back a little bit, especially after doing the last posture, Setubandha Sarvangasana, off of the soft support. So again, choosing your height, whether it's chair, block, one tall block, or maybe one tall block on a low block. If the elbows easily reach the floor, then rest them with the palms facing up. So just find when you exhale, when you pause, find where you can let go. If there's any part of your body that's still holding. And then take a slightly deeper inhale. Bring one palm down in front, the other palm. And slowly push yourself back up to sitting. Walk your hands up onto your thighs until you're completely upright. If the legs need to recharge, just stretch them straight out for a moment. Tighten the legs, push out through the heels, push out through the toes. Just feel the blood circulation coming back into your legs if that was a bit challenging, having the legs crossed. And now we'll get ready for Shavasana. So we can clear the props now. And when we come into relaxation, we do want to feel a spaciousness. So it's a good time to put on a sweater and to move your props out of the way so that you don't feel like they're close to your feet. So we'll have a bit of a height for a pillow, not a big pillow. I tend to need, I know what I need. That's sort of the sign of a more experienced practitioner. Doesn't mean someone who doesn't need any props. It just means someone who knows what props they need to do that pose to the best of their ability, to feel the benefits, to be able to relax into a pose, to be able to breathe fully, to let go of the tension that's unneeded in the posture. Now, if anybody has, maybe I'll just use a bolster to show. You can also, as you know, now you know how to make a bolster at home with your blankets. If anybody has any low back pain, it's very nice to have a bolster that goes, notice it's under the thighs and the knee. So I've got the bottom part of the thigh is supported, plus the knee is supported. And I come down and make sure I'm right in the middle of my mat. Move that away. And again, this pillow comes right under the neck. I tuck the shoulder blades under, and the head and the neck are supported. The blanket's just touching the shoulders, but not under. I scoop the buttocks away from the waist and then stretch both legs out. So this is a nice support. So the thighs and the knees are supported if there's any strain in the low back. If you don't need the bolster, then don't use it. Just move that out of the way. And so I'm feeling on my mat that I'm even on my mat. I'm even from side to side. And I look up, take a look at my feet. They're out to the sides, almost to mat edge. And I let the thighs roll out. Let the toes drop out to the sides. This is a good time to put on, I have my extra blanket here. And it doesn't even have to be a full blanket. Could even just be one opening of your blanket just to have a little bit of warmth on you. And if I'm centered on my mat, then when I take my elbows out to the sides, I can feel both of my upper arms are touching each side of the mat evenly. And then I bring the palms down, the hands down with the palms facing up, and just lifting up the baby finger side. So I'm rolling the arms back, even tucking the shoulders a bit more here to really open the chest. And so you can see I'm really opening up the arms. And then as I come down onto the fingernails, I slowly bend the elbows and see that both forearms are touching evenly. The blanket, any little movement, pulling that blanket again up to touch the top of the shoulders. And then letting loose everywhere. Shavasana. And just for a few moments, bringing your mind into your body, relaxing everywhere, and then swallowing in the throat, resting the root of the tongue deep into the back of the throat. And resting the tip of your tongue behind the lower teeth. As you let the normal inhale, normal exhale find their rhythm, their natural rhythm, and start to observe a moment of pause at the end of each exhale. When the inhale wants to come, simply allow it. We're not trying to hang on to the pause more than we need to. One of the 10 commitments to yoga is practicing contentment. So as we practice contentment, as we exhale and pause, normal inhale, exhale and pause, and invite a silent mantra, a silent statement that you just say to yourself. In this moment, in this body, all is well. So as you exhale and pause, in this moment, in this body, all is well. And as you continue just to be quiet with yourself for a while here, I will chant the invocation to Patanjali as a gesture in honoring our teachers and the teachers of our teacher and our inner teacher. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya javaijikena yopakirotam pravaramuninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi abahu purushakaram Shankachakra Siddharinam Sahasra Shirasam Shwetam Pranamami Patanjalim Hare Om. Taking a slightly deeper inhale now. Bringing movement back to the fingers. One at a time, bringing your hands onto your torso. Bend one knee up. Bend the other knee up. And taking your left arm across the chest, roll slowly onto your right side. Take a few breath cycles on your right. And using that left hand, bring yourself back up to a seated posture. Any position that's comfortable. I'm sitting up on a folded blanket. As you come back to sitting posture, closing your eyes again, lifting your chest, dropping the shoulders. As you inhale, lift the chest. As you exhale, keep the chest lifted. As a gesture of gratitude, bring the palms together in front of your chest. And think of one thing that you are grateful for in this moment, and say that thing silently to yourself. As you inhale, show that gratitude by lifting your chest. And as you exhale, bow the head in humility for everything else that you have to be thankful for. You might name a second or third thing. And simply for the good fortune to be able to practice together in this moment, to be doing something beneficial for our bodies, to honor the cycle of our menstrual practice, to honor the changing needs of ourself, our body, from day to day. And then slowly lower the hands, raise the chin, flutter the eyes open. Namaste. Gwyn signing off, Everly Green Yoga. Until next time, happy practicing.